I'm almost done with this, honestly, thankfully. Although there's constant stuff to cover about this situation, even if what I have runs dry, this will always unravel. Alright. Israel think tank lays out the blueprint for the complete ethnic cleansing of Gaza. An Israeli think tank that with ties to Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu issued a report on October 17th promoting the unique and rare opportunity for the relocation and final settlement of the entire Gaza population. Final settlement? Final solution? Maybe? Nah. Yeah, probably. Alright, update October 24th, 2023. After this article was originally published, the Israel outlet Calculist reported on a separate plan for the ethnic cleanse of Gaza that is being circulated by the Israel intelligence minister headed by Gilia Gamliel. The leaked document was reportedly created for an organization called, quote, the Unit for Settlement Gaza Strip and was not meant for the public. Sorry about that. In the plan being proposed by the intelligence minister, Palestinians in Gaza would be displaced from Gaza to the northern Egyptian Sinai Peninsula. In the report, the minister described different options for what comes after an invasion of Gaza and options deemed as liable to provide positive and long-lasting strategical results was the transfer of Gaza residents to Sinai. The move entails three steps: the creation of tent city southwest of the Gaza Strip, the construction of a humanitarian corridor to, quote, assist the residents, and finally the building of cities in northern Sinai. In parallel, a sterile zone several kilometers wide would be established within Egypt, south of the Israel border, quote, so that the evacuated residents would not be able to return. Alright, so already, even if it weren't for tent cities, I think destroying them and having them relocate somewhere else and losing all their livelihood along the way, that would still be genocide. Um, just mass transportation, mass exodus of people. Like, even if you gave them nice houses at the end of that and said, all right, go here, like, they still just experienced trauma and chaos. So you could never take that away by just giving them mansions suddenly. They would still resent the Zionists at the top, all right? Um, but obviously, this is way more sinister than like the best possible scenario where if they gave them fucking mansions, it would still be genocide. But now they're setting up tent cities for them in preparation, and yeah, okay. In addition, similar to the plan described in a similar story below, the document calls for cooperation with the other countries. In fact, quote, as many as possible so that they may, quote, absorb the Palestinians who have been uprooted from Gaza. Among the countries mentioned as possible sites for Palestinians from Gaza are Canada, European countries such as Greece and Spain, and North African countries. Okay. I was kind of assuming that this wouldn't be the case because of um, the prison that Gaza is, but as they're being blown up out of their homes across Palestine, they're kind of refugees in their own place, but now they're going to be even more stranded as they're expected to wander to this place in Egypt. Alright. And elsewhere, I guess. Original article. The Hamas attack on Israel towns surrounding Gaza on October 7th has provided a pretext for unprecedented genocidal revenge campaign by the Israel involving the massacre of now nearly 5,000 Palestinians. Okay, so this was written like weeks ago. The number is far higher. It's like in the like tens of thousands at this point, including over 2,000 children. That may be only the beginning now, as an Israeli think tank with ties to Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is promoting plans for the complete ethnic cleansing of Gaza. On October 17th, the Misgov Institute for National Security and Zionist Strategy published a position paper, PDF advocating for the, quote, relocation and final settlement for the entire Gaza population. So I was saying final settlement final solution, as in it's ironic that this is the wording given history of the Nazis and their final solution. So the final settlement, that's, it kind of seems pretty dark, and I was just connecting those dots. All right. The report advocates explaining the current moment to accomplish a long-held Zionist goal of moving Palestinians off the land of historic Palestine. The report's subtitle makes it clear, quote, there is at a moment a unique and rare opportunity to evacuate the whole Gaza Strip in coordination with the Egyptian movement, or government. Misgab Institute is headed by former Netanyahu National Security Advisor Mir Ben Shabbat, who remains influential in Israeli security circles. The Institute's former chairperson and founder associates include Yoz Handel, a right centrist who was Minister of Communication intermittently in the year 2020 to 2022, Moshe Yaalon, a former defense minister. Note that both Handel and Yaalon have become opposed to Netanyahu in the recent years. Moshe Aarons, also former defense minister, and other top political personas. The main argument of the report, which the Institute highlighted on social media upon the report's release, are translated as follows. Quote, there is a need for an immediate, viable plan for the resettlement and economic rehabilitation of the entire Arab population in the Gaza Strip, which sits well with the geographical interests of Israel, Egypt, USA, and Saudi Arabia. In 2017, it was reported that in Egypt there are mere 10 million available apartment units, of which half were built and half under construction. For example, in two of the biggest Cairo satellite cities, October 6 and Ramadan 10, there is an immense number of built and empty apartments under governmental and private ownership, as well as empty lots for building that would be in total suffice for the housing of 6 million residents. The average cost of 3-room apartments of 95 square meters for an average Gaza family of 5.14 people in one of the two mentioned cities stands at $19,000. In calculating the total population that resides in the Gaza Strip, which stands between 1.4 to 2.2 million, it is possible to assess that the amount would need to be transferred to Egypt in order to finance would be around 5 to 8 billion. An encouraging injection to the Egyptian economy at this magnitude would provide an enormous and immediate advantage to Egyptian President el-Sisi's regime. Such money sums compared to the Israeli economy are minuscule. The investment of a mere few billion of dollars, even if it is 20 or 30 billion, in order to solve this difficult issue is an innovative, cheap, and viable solution. So I was thinking they were just going to be used for money in some way, and by not eradicating them, not totally wiping them out, it makes it look good for the economy. It's dark in this way that this is probably why, and I might make a video about this. I don't know if I made a video about this, but the Supreme Court was going to take away Native American children from their families, and I bet you somebody knew that this Israel-Palestine situation was going to become unraveled again, and so they didn't want to do that at the exact same time. So the U.S. Supreme Court didn't take away children from Native families, because not only would this become overlapping with what's happening with Palestine and Israel and make people more outspoken about this in a more historically unraveled way, instead of a back and forth who you stand by, Israel, or who you're against Palestine. Yes. So they didn't take away the families or the children from the families because of money, most likely because of tourist reservations, because it's a tourist spot for like people to gawk at and visit, and people and the system makes money from that. And so if that was taken away, they might lose money. And so it just makes sense to use the bodies, even as they're traumatized and destroyed, raped of their livelihoods. You still use them as in and out bodies in the economy. And I think this this fourth one, it makes total fucking sense. It really does. This is the darkest case scenario ever. They're just vessels now. You destroy their spirit in the economy. Okay. There is no doubt that in order for this plan to be enacted, many conditions need to exist in parallel. At the moment, these conditions exist, and it is unclear when such an opportunity will arise again, if at all. It appears that this ethnic cleansing is based on similar logic to that of the Abraham Accords, involving the infamous massive sums toward despotic regimes to write off the Palestinian issue. But this time, it is not just about slow annexation and Buntistination through economic peace, but advocating for the complete population transfer of Palestinians from Gaza. Quote. Oh, sorry. Previous calls for ethnic cleansing. It is not the first time that suggestions for full ethnic cleansing have appeared from Israel analysis of even politicians. In the midst of the 2014 Gaza onslaught, Mosh Phelan, who was then part of Likud and deputy chair of Knesset, sent Netanyahu a public 7-point proposal for the ethnic cleansing of Gaza. He repeated the genocidal advocacy in 2018. Phelan is now a libertarian politician. In a recent interview on Channel 14, Phelan called for a Dresden on Gaza, referring to the World War II firebombing of Dresden in February 1945, killing some 20,000 people. A storm of fire in all of Gaza, he proclaimed, demanding, quote, to not leave stone on stone, and emphasizing total fire and end of days. Miskov Institute's thinking also has been reflected in the Israeli intelligentsia. In 2004, respected Israel historian Benny Morris, who is a self-proclaimed leftist, shocked many by bemoaning the fact that Ben-Gurion did not finish the job and carry out the full ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians, saying it would have led to less conflict in the ensuing decades. But he also said that a transfer and expulsion policy is only a question of time and timing. Morris argues that in normal times such policies may be immoral, but in apocalyptic circumstances they may be both moral, reasonable, and even essential. From his interview in Haaretz. Quote, if you are asking me whether I support the transfer and expulsion of the Arabs from the West Bank, Gaza, and perhaps even from Galilee and Triangle, I say not at this moment. I am not willing to be a partner to that act. In the present circumstances, it is neither moral nor realistic. The world would not allow it. The Arab world would not allow it. It would destroy the Jewish society from within. But I am ready to tell you that in other circumstances, apocalyptic ones, which are liable to be realized in 5 or 10 years, I can see expulsions. End quote. Wait, so yes? That whole diatribe and ranting was just a yes. Okay, so yes, it's not realistic at this moment, but yes. So no, but yes. Yes, if it weren't for very ambivalent answer. I'm sorry. All right. Thus, the Misgrove report would seem not only to be arguing that forcibly displaced the Palestinian population from Gaza, but that, similar to the conditions that Morris laid out, this is a historic opportunity to do it. Israeli support. Since October 7th, the calls from flattening Gaza had been rampant among the Israeli leadership and widely espoused across the population. On October 12th, Israeli Channel 12 published a report about how a desire to ethnically cleanse Gaza has taken hold in Israeli popular culture. Quote, people from the political left and center have called for the flattening of Gaza this week. A very short post fantasizing about the nature party that would take place on what was Gaza land received 100,000 likes and 60,000 shares. The young Tel Aviv woman who posted on Instagram had only 700 followers, but then the post exploded. She claimed to be a centrist who has always sacrificed human rights. Compassion is the first emotion that is activated in me, she says. I do not want to kill Gazan babies. I never hated Arabs, and it's not like I started hating them this week. But after what happened, I say to the Gazan residents, your babies are your problem. Wow. That's just great. As if average people with their families are just, again, the overlap of the people and the terrorists. It's just so flat. It's just so blatantly obvious at that point. Um, Now, to some people who were just killed by terrorists, saying, "Oh, don't worry, it wasn't it was just the terrorists. It wasn't all of Palestinians." That might just be semantics. To anyone who really just doesn't care or is really emotionally heightened, when you're taking sides, it's hard to think rationally, I guess. Um, Jesus Christ. This sentiment seems to match quite well with broad calls from Israel politicians from collective punishment, which have been coming from across the political spectrum, including those considered centrist or liberal. Meanwhile, the world's eyes are on Gaza. Ethnic cleansing is also being realized in the West Bank by Israel settlers and soldiers. The terrorizing of mostly rural Palestinian communities in the West Bank had resulted in the uprooting of several communities before October 7th, but has accelerated greatly since, with some 545 Palestinians forcibly displaced from at least 13 communities since October 7th, according to information from the West Bank Protection Consortium and Israel human rights organization Yesh Dish. The murderous settler attacks against Palestinians in the West Bank have gone relatively little attention, like the murder of 4 Palestinians in Qusra on October 11th, and then the murder of Palestinian fathers and his son at the funeral. The number of killed Palestinians in the West Bank since October 7th is nearly 100 in 2 weeks, an unfathomable pace. Thus, these times are exceptionally dangerous for Palestinians. The Hamas attack seems to have reignited long-standing Zionist wishes, and now some want to exploit this public mood in support of the massive ethnic cleansing campaign. It doesn't seem that it will matter at all at once, but as mentioned, in some places it has already begun. I guess I must agree Netanyahu is definitely allowing this to happen. Alright. Alright, so this is pretty messed up. Like, this seems a little out of hand, honestly. Like, I guess if you think Hamas just is sitting in a chair at a refugee camp, just blow the refugee camp up, right? Alright. So, Israel bombs refugee camp, or Jabalia refugee camp for a straight second. Yeah, okay. Um, Attack comes a day after an Israel air raid killed dozens of people in the densely packed neighborhood. Okay. Israeli forces have bombed the densely packed Jabalia refugee camp in North Gaza for the second day in a row, following the previous assault that killed dozens of people and wounded many others. Palestinian authorities said, quote, dozens of people were killed and wounded in the attack on Wednesday. Footage from the scene of the attack showed people standing around large craters as rescue workers and volunteers dug through pile of rubble with their hands, searching for people and bodies trapped under collapsed buildings. The news outlet AFP reported that rescuers said that, quote, whole families had been wiped out in the attack. The Israeli military later issued a statement saying its fighter jets had struck a Hamas command and control complex in Jabalia based on precision intelligence, killing the head of the group's anti-tank missile unit, Muhammad Asar. So, I guess that's the reason, supposedly. Like, I assume it's possible some Hamas terrorists, like, know that citizens are going to be destroyed on their behalf. So, there might be a situation where they don't even care about their own citizens. Like, why else would they? Yeah, okay. More than 50 people were killed and dozens of others wounded in the bombing of Jabalia on Tuesday, according to Palestinian authorities and the director of the Indonesia hospital, which received some of the casualties. Mohammed Abu Ali Quamsan, a broadcast engineer with Al Jazeera's bureau in Gaza, lost 19 family members in the attack. The Palestinians' armed group Hamas said that even 7 captives taken during the group's deadly incursion into Israel on October 7th, that Israel authorities say killed more than 1,400 people and took more than 200 captives, were killed in the bombing on Tuesday. Well, they don't care about the captives. Okay. 17, quote, 17 detainees were killed in the Jabail massacre yesterday, including 3 holders of foreign passports. Okay. The UN humanitarian chief, Martin, described the attack as an atrocity. This is just the latest atrocity to befall the people of the Gaza. Okay. Um, so we got that. That's pretty terrible. I can't read that whole thing right now. That's terrible. This really breaks my heart, to be fair. And I can't really expect him to not take sides with Israel, because I think he's Jewish. Not to essentialize, it just seems like a broad association of allyship. Okay. Bernie Sanders' failure to back Israel-Gaza ceasefire upsets U.S. followers. Progressive and Arab American advocates say they expect more from the prominent U.S. Senator and former presidential hopeful. Washington, D.C. In a stunning moment during the 2016 United States presidential race, Bernie Sanders called out his then rival Hillary Clinton for failing to mention Palestinian rights in the speech she delivered to the pro-Israel lobby group. Standing on a stage in a nationally televised primary debate, Sanders highlighted the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza and criticized the unconditional support that the Israel government under Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu received from Washington. I actually didn't know historically he was so hard line against what they're doing to Palestinians. That's interesting. Okay, quote. There comes a time when if we pursue justice and peace, we are going to have to say that Netanyahu is not at all right at the time. Right all the time, he said. It was a rare statement to come from Washington politicians. Few, even among left-leaning Democrats, have questioned whether the United States should reconsider its unwavering support for Israel. But flash forward 7 years, and Sanders is now drawing ire from many of his supporters who feel let down by his current stance towards the Israel-Hamas war. As the Israel military offensive in Gaza intensifies, killing thousands of children and leveling entire neighborhoods, Sanders has not called for the ceasefire. Because of his reputation as an anti-war voice, critics say he is uniquely positioned to amplify demands for ending the hostilities in Gaza. Quote, at a time when Washington is lining up behind those, including the president, who are beating the drums of war, we need leaders with the courage and the legacy of anti-war activism to break the consensus and say all human life is precious by demanding a ceasefire, said Eva Balgward, political director at If Not Now, a progressive Jewish group. Quote, if anyone can do that in a Senate, it is Senator Sanders. Sanders' position. All right, very disappointing. Seriously. Last week, activists held a protest at Sanders' Senate office to call him on to back a ceasefire. Quote, we went to his office to say we and his colleagues in the House who are bravely speaking out at a great personal and political risk need him now, Bargward told Al Jazeera in a statement. Democratic House members introduced a ceasefire resolution on October 16th, but on the Senate side, there have been no calls for ending the war. Earlier this month, almost 300 former staffers who worked on Sanders' presidential campaign signed a letter calling on him to introduce a similar resolution. Quote, President Joe Biden clearly values your counsel, as is shown by the ways you're managed to shape the outcomes of his presidency, the letter first reported by The Intercept said, quote, we urge you to make it clear what is at stake in this crisis politically, morally, and strategically. Sanders called for a humanitarian pause, which really sucks because that's lesser than a ceasefire. Sanders called for humanitarian fighting last week, but only after Secretary of State Antony Blinken made a similar demand. The senator voiced his strongest criticisms of the Israel offensive on Monday, but he stopped short of calling for a ceasefire. Quote, the U.S. provides a $3.8 billion a year to Israel, Sanders wrote in a social media post. The Biden administration and Congress must make it clear Israel has the right to defend itself and destroy Hamas terrorism, but it does not have the right to use U.S. dollars to kill thousands of innocent men, women, and children in Gaza. End quote. In 2016, Sanders, an independent senator from Vermont who caucuses with Democrats, defied the odds and mounted a competitive primary challenge against Clinton. 4 years later, he led the race for the Democratic nomination until several candidates dropped out and threw their support for Biden, or behind Biden, who would go on to win the presidency. Okay. Domestically, Sanders centered uh, his platform on combating economic inequality, but his outside approach to politics extended to foreign policy as well. He said he would impose human rights conditions on U.S. aid to Israel, a proposal Biden dismissed as bizarre during the 2020 race. Sanders, who is Jewish, has also long decried the humanitarian crisis as a besieged in the besieged Gaza Strip, describing it as unsustainable and unacceptable. He has also referred to Netanyahu as a reactionary racist. Okay. Arab communities. Sanders' message at the time resonated deeply with Arab and Muslim Americans and rallied around his campaign and helped him win the Michigan Democratic primary in 2016 in one of the race's largest upsets. But the senator's current unwillingness to call for a ceasefire has left many of his Palestinian Arab and Muslim supporters with a sense of disappointment, if not betrayal. Omar Badar, a Palestinian American analyst who supported Sanders' 2020 presidential campaign, said it is, quote, hard to convey the depth of the disappointment he feels over the senator's failure to back on a ceasefire. Quote, I know the political climate in the U.S. at the moment is scary, anti-Palestinian, intolerant of dissent, but that's precisely why Sanders' voice would be so valuable, Bader told Al Jazeera. If Sanders speaks out, Bader believes his action will create the political space for others to do the same. Or Bader also played down Sanders' call for the pause in the fighting. Pausing the slaughter of civilians in Gaza is not a moral position, he said, stressing that the fighting must end. Quote, those who oppose a full ceasefire are under the delusional impression that Israel can achieve peace or stability through mass violence, ignoring the fact that Israel's brutality towards Palestinians is precisely why we're in a solution where no one is safe, Bader told Al Jazeera. Quote, even in an unlikely scenario that Israel is able to eliminate Hamas, the sheer horror it is inflicting on the people of Gaza will undoubtedly produce the next generation of militants who will want to seek revenge against Israel. If that's what Netanyahu knows, if that's what he knows, that's kind of messed up that he uses that as a reason to keep destroying the Palestinians. Simple as that, honestly. Come on, Sanders, what is wrong with you? This is actually, like, deranged. Arab community shaken to its core. Amir Zar, a Palestinian-American comedian and activist who campaigned for Sanders in Arab communities across the country, also voiced dismay at the senator's stance. Quote, after a massive support Bernie received from the Arab, Muslim, and Palestinian Americans in 2016 and 2020, we would have expected he would have been one of the first to urge an immediate ceasefire, Zora told Al Jazeera. Quote, his failure to do so is an affront. His voice opened the door for many others to say the same. To call his actions, or lack thereof, a massive disappointment would be understanding the hurt. Sanders' Senate office did not respond at all to Al Jazeera's request for comment by the time of publication. Sahaleh Aman, an Arab American advocate in Michigan, said she was flabbergasted by Sanders' position, adding that the Arab community at large is extremely disappointed in the senator. The community is truly shaken to its core that no one has actually stood up from the administration or those who we have supported in the past on their presidential runs and said, this must come to an end, this must stop, Amen told Al Jazeera. That you can't even ask for a ceasefire is absolutely disgusting and beyond me when you're watching in real time children being pulled out of rubble, Noor Ali, a Michigan activist, also recalled the excitement of Sanders' presidential campaign sparked in the state's Arab and Muslim communities, where many Arabic speakers called him Ammo or Uncle Bernie. Okay, this has left many of us to reckon with who we have decided to support politically in the past. While the Republican Party is outright in their Islamophobia, many Arab and Muslim Americans are realizing that the Democratic Party, both moderates and progressives, have used us as a talking point, Ali told Al Jazeera. Yes, this is unfortunately very true. I could not I couldn't explain to you how true this is. This is mostly like I kind of supported Sanders